Okay, everything should be up and running and live. So, welcome, listeners, to April's live news. Hello, hello, hello. Who have we got? We've got me.
Yes, welcome, everybody.
And we have Scott. And the random one.
And the random one.
Good evening.
So, what have all of y'all been up to this month?
So, what have we all been up to? Per our usual, go around the horn and figure out what we've been doing. I myself have beat a few more PS4 games. I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but I got, let's see, Battlefield 2, I know I mentioned that. I think last month I was close to beating the damn mech game, Titanfall 2. I beat that. Great ending, by the way. And then I really put some attention on Fallout 4, which I kind of already started. And I beat Fallout 4. You can go back and replay the ending like, many different combinations of siding with different factions and, whether you side with the Institute or you side with the Brotherhood of Steel or whatever. I ended up just playing one ending for now because I wanted to get on to some other things. So I factioned with the Brotherhood of Steel. Got some awesome power armor. We built the big robot, went in and nuked the Institute and raided it. And actually a pretty kind of anticlimactic ending in that you run through and, of course, the big reveal, and that person you think is going to be a powerful enemy is just like kind of laying there. You pop them once and keep moving. But a pretty good ending after that. So it was that was exciting. Then I was kind of hemming and hawing. I kind of wanted to do Dragon Quest Heroes, World Tree, and it is basically it's Dragon Warrior, but brought into modern day. It's a fantastic looking game. But then there's also The Last of Us, and I kind of even though I really want to do something other than another sort of gritty survival game, I went ahead and started The Last of Us, and I'm kind of mixed right now. I'm probably in I'm through the tutorials, I'm through the basic scenes, and kind of started the main mission, And I don't know. There's sometimes not a lot of gameplay. There is a lot of sneaking about, which at least they made that workable. Like every little step doesn't instantly call every enemy within 1,000,000 miles and you die. It's manageable, So darn playable game, fun stuff. And I think I'll probably go through and beat it unless it just kind of peters out in the middle, but I don't know that it will. So I'm just kind of looking forward to, I guess the action picking up a bit and moving on. And after that, going to a little RPG action. How about you guys?
Gaming-wise, not too much. I've been fiberglassing and priming and spraying the side panels from the driving cab.
Hey, Mike, your audio has really degraded. It sounds like
Mike's a bit hot.
Oh dear. Right, okay.
Well, the quality it's very distorted.
Let me try this one. Is that any better?
Say a few things more.
I'll say a few things more.
Have we got double playback going on? No, seems to stop now.
No, okay. Right. We shall continue. Yes, so I've been fiberglassing and painting the side panels from the driving cab. So it seems to have taken forever, but the fiberglassing took a good while. It was pretty fucked. One side was completely bashed in, big chunks of it missing, so I had to reconstruct a lot of it. And just build the layers up, rub it down, build the layers up, then get to the painting. So I've got a couple of coats of paint to finish, and then I'll stick a clear varnish on there, and then I can assemble the cab fully. But other than that, not too much.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've not played much games either since the last news. A couple of days after the news, I went to Scotland for 10 days to work more on our feature film, Crooked Frames, we've got the main filming done. There's a couple of fun things to do in the mountains, maybe some drone shots, but all the stuff with actors is pretty much in the can now. It's just down to the editing and the audio, and hopefully that will start to come together. So that was a good time. And then since I come back, I've not really got back into gaming. Don't know whether it's because the weather's been nice, although I've not really made use of the weather, if it has. But I've sort of caught a few bits of Monster Hunter World here and there, and a couple of half-hour sessions of Into the Breach, but not really been able to play much. I suppose I've put another 2 or 3 hours into Beatmania, but I'm trying to fix up my 7-button controller for that to really get back into it. But hopefully in the next few months, everything's sort of settled down now, apart from a friend's wedding and revival. I should be able to try and have some spare time to play games, but never know. And something that Scott will probably hate is I bought an electric car last week and a half ago.
What did you get?
Well, look, I am thoroughly mixed on electric cars. I'm very curious what you got.
So I bought a second-hand Nissan Leaf, or that's Nissan to you.
No, I've watched enough Jeremy Clarkson. Nissan has snuck in there.
It's really good condition, like absolutely like nothing wrong with it. It's fantastic, and basically I'd looked into, done a lot of calculations on sort of stuff, and we're moving offices at some point before the end of this year. So I'm going to have to do more town driving probably, but we do quite a lot. I looked at it, and like most of our journeys, like Amber's just started another job in town. We're just doing a lot of just small journeys every day in and around town for either work or shopping. So it looks like we're going to save like about £2,000 a year at least on petrol and things like that. So it just kind of makes sense for what we're doing, and we've still got a economic diesel, which has got decent performance and also decent economy for long range stuff.
So tell me you've not got an electric cable running all the way from your house all the way down the steps.
Not yet, because I've got power in the garage, and we sort of thought about, could we run an extension lead across to the other side of the street to do it, but we've not done it yet. We're just making use of all the public charging points around Sheffield, which are all free. So at the moment, I'm paying absolutely fuck all for
I wouldn't run a cable across the road, especially not on the fucking hill you live on.
Taxes. It's not free.
Well, probably, yeah. Well, the government sort of subsidise a lot of it at the moment.
Where does the government get their money? Your taxes.
Yeah,
You're paying for your taxes.
Yeah.
But
There's two things you always need to remember about the government, okay? Anything that's free from the government is basically sold back to you at a horrendous loss to your taxes. And then anything that with the electric cars that they say it's pollution. No, it's just got a 300-mile long tailpipe. That's all there is.
But yeah, and it's not so bad as I'm paying for the taxes, but then I'd be paying for that plus petrol or diesel. So I'm paying for just the tax part of it at the moment. So yeah, seems to be good. We're really, really enjoying the car. It's surprisingly, it's a weird driving experience coming from an Alpha and a sport version of a sort of hatchback, and driving that. It's a completely different sort of driving experience, but it's still really enjoyable. And because all the weight's low down, it's got a great centre of gravity. It seems to handle quite nicely as well. So, yeah, bit boring.
Well, I got a little automotive project going myself right now. I finally found, after some years of looking, a 1989 Subaru XT6, which they called the Wonder Wedge because it's a wedge-shaped, little sports car, and it was full of technology that didn't exist on many cars for another decade or two. It had things like electric power steering, digital dash, just every kind of gadget you can imagine. That stuff that a turbo, stuff that you didn't see in small cars at that time. And it all worked wonderfully. Well, it originally had a 1.8 liter motor making about 100 horsepower, or you could get the 2.7 liter 6-cylinder that made 145 horsepower. So I bought this car and gutted it down to the bare metal. And I'm currently swapping in a twin supercharged 6.2 liter V8 that is guaranteed by Vortec to make at least 1,200 horsepower on 93 octane gas. So I'm putting a 1,200 horsepower 6.2 liter V8 into a Subaru that had a 1.8 liter, 4-cylinder. So that's fun. I'll throw out my thoughts on electric cars real quick. Electric is going to become the dominant technology. It absolutely will. It's better in every way once it reaches, full development. If you look at, model airplanes, right? They've been completely revolutionized. Entire new categories of things were made possible, like, quad rotors and all that. If not for the, brushless motor and the LiPo cells, none of this stuff would have come about. The power package got light enough that literally you don't even need lift, wings anymore. You just do propulsive flight. It's amazing. When electric first started, I was an early adopter of electric model airplanes and all. And when they first started, you got like a 2-3 minute flight time. They were so underpowered, you had to hand launch. So they couldn't rise off ground. All that's completely, changed. I've got now, electric jets that use a ducted fan. And literally, I can lay it down in the cul-de-sac, nail the throttle, and 10 foot it takes off climbing straight up. It's that will happen with electric cars. There will be a point at which electric will outperform gas and will deliver a usable range. When I say usable range, I'm talking about, a minimum of 180 miles. I'm talking not. The problem with a lot of cars, and Top Gear got sued for this, is they revealed the truth that, like with the Lotus Roadster, I'm sorry, it was a Lotus with electric power plant at the Tesla Roadster, that it was either a sports car or it got 190 miles range, but not both. You could not drive it assertively and still get range. It was either or. And that's going to go away. And what we will see within 5 to 10 years are electric cars that outperform gas cars and have the range. Right now, Tesla's still bullshitting you. They've still got that, look at insanity mode. Look how fast it accelerates. It's as fast as a Mustang GT. Okay, do that 3 times, then let's drive to work. Oh, I can't do that. It's either or. But yeah, we will arrive at a point. I've done gas hot rodding my whole life. I've done superchargers, turbochargers, big engines, all kinds of shit. I look forward to hot rodding electric because that's going to be a big thing too. Picking out the right motor, controller, power pack, all that, and shoving it into something. All that's coming about. And I look forward to that. But and Dave, this is not directed at you.
Okay.
What I am not in the mood for is somebody in front of me in a Nissan Leaf chugging along, and they're doing the speed limit or 5 under, and they have range anxiety, and they come to that first big hill. And, they're already doing fucking 50 and a 55. I'm trying to do 65, 70. They're doing 50. And they hit that first hill, and they see that charge meter start dropping, and they're like, uh-oh. And they slow down to 35, and they won't fucking pull over and let you around. And those are the people I want to watch that pack burst into flames and immolate and get out of my life. But once we get through that phase of electric cars, I will be an embracer of them. Just not right now.
Well, they're the same people I get stuck behind, even in my Leaf, and I'm like, come on, get the fuck on, come on. And so far, like driving around town, you're obviously stuck in traffic, but then even sort of driving out towards Snake Pass recently to go mountain biking and stuff, I'm still like stuck behind SUVs and shit, just tootling along, and I'm like, for fuck's sake. And like, I bought the Alpha because I was doing so many miles on the Snake, and I wanted to have fun on there. And it just, the last couple of years, it's just got really shit for just being stuck behind long lines of so much traffic you can't do anything about. And so it's just like, well, fuck it, this isn't really working anyway. So,
yeah, but I have the same frustration, Dave. I really do. But when it comes to that first chance to stomp the pedal and angrily bolt around them, I can't resist.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely do that. And that's something I love about the Alpha, and it's going to be a shame when I do actually finally get rid of it. But even then, like, I will happily sacrifice a good 5% of my battery to just turn off all the eco modes on the Leaf and just stomp it, and it's faster than the Sports Seat, and not far off.
Okay,
the
you can't
Alpha.
use a Seat as an example or a Touchstone for fast. That's impermissible and inadmissible.
Well, it's somewhere between 170. Like, I've got one car that's 170 brake, and then one that's 220. And I'd say, like, 0 to 50, it's between the two of them. It's surprisingly how fucking it will shift. It just, like you say, it just nails the shit out of the battery. But I'm happy to do that in the interest of getting the fucking move on. But I don't need to
Preach
go
that to your fellow early adopters.
Yeah, I don't need to go like massive distances, so I can get away with it. So it's not so much of a problem.
Look, at some point, I will replace my daily driver with an electric when electric delivers me undeniable usable range and delivers, the same performance as the high horsepower cars I commute in, and that will happen. That need will be met, and I'll do it out of the novelty of trying the electric. It's going to happen, just not right now. And when it's done for the same price as the gas vehicles, which is ultimately absolutely achievable. And just one more bit on this, and then we'll move on to the retro stuff. But in the early days of the technology that made all this new stuff available in model aviation, the LiPo and brushless, I remember spending over $1,000 for one LiPo cell and a brushless motor and controller. Over $1,000, I think it was like $1,400 for one motor and battery for an airplane. Today, for $100, I can go on eBay and have my pick of many of them. And they're cheap. The gas motors at the time were maybe $300, and here I was spending $1,300 for an equivalent electric. But now the electrics are $100, for a motor, controller, and battery, and the equivalent gas motor is still $300 to $400, and those are dwindling. So, ultimately, we're going to see electric succeed. I'll still keep gas cars. I mean, my 82 Subaru will forever remain gasoline, and I'll definitely always have some gas-powered exotic, And, in the future, you'll have to go to the other side of town to find the gas pump that's still in town. Because gas cars will still be a thing for a long time. But yeah, we'll definitely see all that transpire within our lifetimes. So on to the news. I'm going to run one first here that was submitted by Mr. Random that I took a look at when it came in, and I thought was absolutely brilliant. And this is behind the scenes of Tiger LCD Games. And Dave says here, check out the site with ROM dumps and screen dumps of a bunch of Tiger LCD games. I didn't see Outrun in there, which is a shame because I've made a T-shirt from that screen. So I know I've seen this site before, like a long time ago. Sean Riddle, I recognize that name. I think he's maybe been associated with Classic Gaming Expo at some point or something. I know I've heard that name, and it just kicks me in the ass. I can't remember the context. But it's a pretty comprehensive site. It shows you like the LCD masks of all kinds of games. It shows you, the individual, little shapes that go into making the screen, and how they laid this stuff out to create, multiple levels and all was just amazing. Incredible artistry. And it has the ROM dumps there and then actual pictures of the masks used to etch the ROMs. So I think it's just a real neat site and a good find.
One sent in from me was Game Design Legends, The Golden Age of Sid Meier. And it's an article in PC Mag and fairly lengthy, tells you all about some of his games, F1 Strike Eagle, Silent Service, Sid Meier's Pirates, and it goes on and on. Fairly lengthy, decent article for you. Link will be in the show notes, of course, and if I remember, I'll paste it in chat as well.
I'm hoping Mike will also link to Carl Klitsky's image he sent through, which he saw on a Taco Bell, which has dogging instructions. And apparently to dog, you insert hex key, turn clockwise until it stops, fully depress touch bar, then release. I like to release at the end of my dogging, obviously. And to undog,
touch bar.
yeah, insert the key, turn clockwise until it stops, touch bar will release. But yeah, just a little bit of fun there from Taco Bell, and like he says it doesn't think that's dogging means a door means something different in the USA. I'm guessing from Scott's original calls to Mike saying, Mike, I've heard about this dogging thing. What is it? I don't think it's...
No, it's not well known. It has no such context here in the US. None.
I saw a doggy yesterday. Think about it. Dirty bastard. It was I was out walking the dogs in the woods. Not actually the dogging woods, but kind of adjacent to the dogging woods. But he'd smelt like he just had a shower, and he was very well groomed and prepared, and I don't know what he was doing wandering around the woods other than looking for someone who would like the fact that he just had a shower. Maybe he wasn't, maybe he was, who knows.
That sounds like a Craigslist ad. I'll be showered and wandering alone in the woods. Got one here from UK Mike, Mr. Mike James. And it's, he says here, it's Genuine, owned by UK VAC member. And it is a prototype Miss Pac-Man cocktail. Now, how this thing ended up in the UK, that's another mystery right there. Mm. Yeah, it says it's a early prototype, which means it would, be a Pac-Man board with the Miss Pac-Man daughter card and all that. And the guy says that he hit up Todd at TNT Amusements. That's, of course, Todd Tuckey, real nice guy. He runs TNT Amusements. And Todd said he heard of the machines, but never saw one in person. So I have not seen one of these. It's kind of interesting, the layout.
Yeah, never seen one myself. And like Scott says, not sure how it ended up over here. But interesting machine nonetheless. One here from Sean Stevenson, Retro Sean to his friends. Interactive Archive launches handheld history collection. So these are they've done it with a few systems now, where you can go online and run various games and play games in your browser. Now they've done a handheld one.
Interesting here. I've got one from Alan Hegedus, maybe. We'll see.
I'm glad you butchered that, because I was about to.
Yeah, I mean, I trust me, mine gets butchered, but okay. Hegedus. I'll just, hopefully, Alan, it's Hegedus, and correct us if we're wrong. And he says here that looks like they took lessons from Microsoft on their naming convention. So it's called, the Atari Box is now, and I missed this. This is fantastic. The Atari Box is now Atari VCS. And it's reinventing the way you game again by changing its name to the Atari VCS. That's already taken. It's been done.
Yeah.
And not by you guys.
Pissing off many gaming wiki owners around the world. They already pissed off enough with like Xbox and now
this is not going to go well. Nobody's going to know. If you're trying to appeal to the fans that have nostalgia for the brand, don't name the thing the Atari VCS. At least it wasn't named the Atari VGS, and then we'd all know who was maybe in on that.
There's a few similarities that we may get to later in the news.
Could be.
The two campaigns. One that I sent in, which I found, was we have our first Nintendo Labo knockoff, which was reported on Nintendo Live. And it's someone that's come out with essentially like a tabletop arcade that you slot the Switch into and the two controllers, Joy-Cons into each side. And it turns it into a little tabletop arcade machine. It doesn't do anything special like the Labo stuff, but it's kind of just incorporate, why no one had come up with anything like this before Labo, and the fact that there's cardboard available in the world is because this could be made out of anything and at any time. But we are going to see, I think, a slew, as we predicted, of foldable cardboard peripherals for putting your Switch into things.
All right, this one here, I got to call bullshit on this. Submitted by Mr. Sparklepuss here. Subject, put your weed in there. And it says, once again, our great hobby is being co-opted for drug smuggling. Once again, implies it was done before. This may be the first, and I'm not so sure about this. So what the article says here that Mark found was that Dutch police have recently busted a drug operation that has been using a 3D printer to create fake Nintendo cartridges that were being used to hide and smuggle illegal substances. Now, as I'm looking at it, the funny thing is they're showing miniature Nintendo cartridges that are about the size of Game Boy cartridges sitting on top of a Raspberry Pi case with a Raspberry Pi in it and not an actual NES. So here's the problem. You can let's say you 3D print a cartridge instead of just, I don't know, buying the thing for $1 and using it. It's a lot of trouble for nothing. And then you're going to put, like, let's say, whatever thing you're trying to ship in it. That only visually fools, like, the casual observer who has no interest in prying open the game to see what's inside. It doesn't, however, fool fucking drug dogs who will smell your drugs and not be at all taken in by your clever ruse to make it look like by a Nintendo cartridge.
This is definitely in no way up to the same standards as my idea when I was clubbing, and all the girls would have like lollipops that they'd get from I don't know whether people were selling them in the toilets or whatever, and partway through the night they'd all be just sucking on flavored lollipops and stuff. And I was like, why not just make a lollipop that I can just infuse with MDMA, and then no one's going to bat an eyelid when they're all just wandering around eating these lollipops, but they're just going to be getting high. Excellent. Job's a good one. But again, whether the sugary and flavored flavorings would actually sort of overcome any sort of drugs dogs, but then you don't get drugs dogs when you're clubbing. There's just bouncers that want to see if you've got pills or powder. So lollipops, that's the way to do it. You could even put acid in them.
It's the future.
It was the future 20 years ago when I thought of it. Never did anything with it. Apparently no one really has lollipops anymore when they're clubbing. I don't know.
Okay, quick one for me. Brian Eddy has gone to Stern Pinball. The world's oldest and largest maker of arcade quality pinball machines announced the hiring of Brian Eddy in the role of senior game designer. Brian is best known for the design of two of the most iconic games in the history of pinball, those being Attack from Mars and Medieval Madness. So he's gone to Stern.
And something other good news out of Stern here. Stern has announced they're doing Alice Cooper pinball. Now, I, first of all, am an Alice Cooper fan. Absolutely love Alice Cooper. Always have. He's a very interesting guy. He's very quiet in real life. He's, as I understand it, somewhat of a devout Christian. He's not. He just plays this character, that is his stage persona. I guess good work if you can get it and get to be Alice Cooper. So
it's not Stern, is it?
Yeah,
is it not Spooky Pinball?
It said coming to Stern, but you know what? The link at the beginning says Spooky Pinball when the YouTube video starts.
Yeah, Alice Cooper's Nightmare Castle, Spooky Pinball.
All right, you submitted this and somebody else did too. Okay, whatever. I guess the first link is wrong. So anyway, so Spooky Pinball is doing it. Okay, well, coming to Spooky Pinball then. Either way, Alice Cooper, brilliant IP to do it about. I know there's a lot of Alice Cooper fans out there. There's a lot of pinball fans that'll buy anything if it's a pinball and it's limited. I think this could be really good. Again, Alice Cooper fan here, so I think I shall have to find one of these and play it. It's one of those that kind of like AC/DC. I like AC/DC. I don't know if I'd buy the AC/DC pinball, but I would sure play it on location. I think this, for me, will probably fall in the same category. Can't wait to play it. Not sure if I'd buy one.
Buy it, yeah.
But cool.
And some more Stern news sent in by Glenn Minette, that Stern have announced an Iron Maiden pinball machine, which they say aims to reflect the same excitement, energy, and experience of a live Iron Maiden concert. Players will immerse themselves in an interactive Iron Maiden universe, transforming into various forms of Eddie, the band's legendary mascot. So that could be. Am I right in thinking Iron Maiden's more of a, definitely more of a UK thing, Scott?
No, they're. It's kind of funny because, if you talk to Sean Stevenson, and he definitely sees, Iron Maiden as being UK and all that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, in the U.S., certainly, definitely in the 80s, Iron Maiden was. I would have thought bigger here than over there. It's like, okay, yeah, his home folks appreciate them, but there are millions and millions and millions of fans are over here. Just because of the sheer population differential between the U.S. and the U.K. That I always felt like there were more. I mean, the U.S. record sales were bigger, all that kind of stuff. The concert tours were bigger in the U.S. So if I would say, if anything, the Iron Maiden is bigger here. There's certain things like the Trooper Ale was probably better known and better received over there.
We've had a couple of their beers now, licensed beers.
Yeah, that's going to be more of a UK thing, just because you can distribute it to the audience is more compact and centrally located, right? If you tried to do that in the US, you'd have to go, okay, well, there's millions of Iron Maiden fans, but they're spread over such a large area. How do you get, they all come to one place to see a concert. They'll all buy albums online or go to a record store. Will they all go to that bar that has that ale just because it's Iron Maiden? Probably not. So, some things I think are perceptibly more UK centric, but in general, Iron Maiden huge here. And that's another example. It's a great pinball machine that I would absolutely buy. I mean, I'm sorry, I would absolutely play, but not sure I'd buy that. I mean, pinball. That's the thing they've got now that they've hit like the $8,000 price range. That it's the decision model of I like this enough to buy it has definitely changed, and that's why I'm absolutely going from now on with. If I do buy, when I buy more pinballs, new, I'll be putting them on location and letting somebody else buy them for me.
Mm-hmm.
So got one here from Chris Leithco, and it's the article is a great behind-the-scenes look at the chaos that was the Super Mario movies. Of course, it's the first Super Mario Brothers movie. The meltdown that Dennis Hopper had in particular is a great read. So I like the first Super Mario Brothers movie, 1992. Many people didn't. I did, But apparently it's a very long article. I can't possibly read it all here. But apparently there was a lot of fighting, a lot of arguing. Nobody was happy, and nobody wanted to be there. But I don't know. I don't think it showed through in the movie. I thought it was a pretty darn good movie. That's about it. But, I got to read this thing. It is huge.
Something else that's huge you can read is a Kickstarter for a book, Oddworld, Abe's Origins. And there are lots of stretch goals as usual, but the book includes lots of artwork. They show you examples of some of the pages there. Exclusive interviews with the team. The team behind the games have collaborated with the book. There's lots of stuff in there from them. And there are offers of games available as well, DRM-free versions of the Abe's Odyssey and Abe's Exodus on PC. So lots of good stuff you can add in the bundle. And link will be in the show notes. So I love those games. So might be a interesting thing to pick up.
Is that still running, that Kickstarter?
Let's have a look. I was just on it. Let's go back on it. Oh, no, it's ended. 2,935 backers pledged £154,778 to bring this project to life. What were they asking for? What does it say? 45,000 they wanted, so they more than trebled it, almost quadrupled the target. So I'm sure you'll be able to pick up the book at some point if you didn't manage to get in the Kickstarter. But lucky for those who did.
Okay, I got one here that I can't tell exactly how Spinal means this, and I'm not sure exactly how I receive it, so this is interesting. Spinal says, "Hi everyone, I don't think I need to explain this. I fell into a YouTube hole and found this video." And it is a 18-minute long video about a guy who made a dock for his Switch out of a GameCube. Now, he did wire it so that like you can plug in a GameCube controller and use it to play games on the Switch. So, you got basically this giant slot cut through a GameCube that the Switch snaps into. He 3D printed a whole central caddy. I think you could just repurpose the Nintendo one, but, So he goes through and builds this whole thing so that he can have a Nintendo GameCube controller plugged into the GameCube with the Switch sitting in the GameCube and playing the Switch. I know I would never do this. I don't know that this bothers me or not. I mean, you do whatever you want. It's not like it's, classic hardware yet or really important hardware. It's a GameCube, but I don't know, man. What's the point being served here?
Yeah, to me, I'd had a flick through that, and yeah, I've got a bit of a soft spot for the GameCube in terms of its design, and it just seemed like there's a lot of like hacking a GameCube to pieces and then spending money on third-party docks to put inside it for not a great deal of benefit, really. It certainly doesn't, it's a lot less compact than the original dock and the third-party dock. Aside from being able to plug in the GameCube controllers, which I think you can do anyway with the Wii U GameCube adapter that they made for Smash Brothers. Like, there was a firmware update where that started to work. So I don't see why you wouldn't have just bought the third-party dock, or even just kept the original one and plugged in the GameCube adapter, and you'd achieve the same thing without hours of faffing about with glue guns. But hey, if you want a project to make something and dick about with something, then why not, I suppose.
Sure.
But he did do a really good job of it. I watched the video. It does look pretty sweet when it's finished. Yeah, I'm not sure why he 3D printed it. I think it was to add some sort of tabs to it to hold it in the case, something like that. But he didn't butcher his own dock. He bought another. So yeah, I'm not sure. Not sure.
So got one here from Sparklepus, and it says ray tracing, and it's a link to a VentureBeat article. NVIDIA reinvents workstations with real-time ray tracing. So ray tracing, it's and I'm sure Random, you could probably chime in. You know more about it than I do, I bet. But the gist is they use the ray of light to highlight objects within a scene and generate it somehow. I don't quite get it, the gist of it. But they said it took a tremendous amount of computing power, was rendered very slowly, but the newer technology that puts it into the GPU lets it be rendered very quickly on the fly. Random, you got anything to add to that? I mean, it sounds like it's an important advancement in GPUs, but what can you tell us about that?
It's always been sort of the holy grail of rendering for the most sort of realistic thing. So instead of sort of faking the you're projecting onto a fake 2D screen, like an approximation with algorithms and calculations of where the 3D would be. You're actually you're effectively drawing the light path from the user, as it were, to the objects, or the objects to the user, if you're doing reflected light and things, to actually give you a realistic light bounce and scatter and all sorts. It opens the doors to all sorts of techniques and more realistic things. And you always used to get quite a few Amiga demos where you'd have the checkered balls, which were then real-time ray traced, but in incredibly low resolution and sort of low detail. And it's this computationally expensive thing that you'll have when you're doing
now, there's a show title, computationally expensive.
when you're rendering out, say, a Pixar film or whatever, and you're not worried, you're just sending all this stuff to a render farm, you're not worrying about doing it in real time, you're just letting it crunch away. That's fine. It's been used there for years to do, especially, say, realistic car models, and you've got all the headlight clusters.
So the revolution is doing it on the fly.
So yeah, the revolution is fine. Finally, we're getting to a point where we can do this in real time, at a detail level that's worthy of actually pursuing as well. Not so much retro themed, I suppose, but I mean, there are retro roots of, we've always tried to do ray tracing, and we've done some real-time ray tracing to a degree, but now it's sort of bringing it all up to a full production quality standard. So what you'd expect to see today from PS4, you'd get that, but looking even more realistic. The last sort of big jump in sort of really, especially with like your Forza and your Gran Turismo, was physically based rendering, which took into account, the way that leather and plastic and metal all sort of reflects light differently, and made that look much better than we could with approximations of it. But this will sort of actually realistically do the lighting as well, and bring it all together.
Okay, so real time on the fly is the revolution. Check.
Yeah.
One here from Spinal, and we go from graphics to sound. This is quite interesting, using some newly discovered techniques for playing audio samples on a C64. The guy has come up with a C64 audio that plays 48 kHz music on a stock C64. The quality is quite unbelievable. The link will send you to a page that fully explains the process and provides a couple of YouTube videos of the software in action. I can't play it now due to some shenanigans going on in the studio this weekend, but it does sound impressive, so give the video a watch.
I'm just looking at one that Mike sent in, which was from Hackaday, which it's titled "Finally a Big Screen Vectrex." I haven't had much time to look at it, but basically, they've managed to patch into the Vectrex output and put that out into originally a 19-inch monitor, and it sounds like there's now future plans are involving upgrading to the larger 23-inch monitor. That's not there yet, but they've basically got a TV output from the Vectrex, and they've got this a CRT in a frame, vertically of course, replicating the output of the Vectrex. So you'll be able to do in the future. People will be able to make some funky, cool stuff out of the Vectrex. Maybe some full-size arcade cabs, perhaps. Break out the controllers into a full arcade panel and put a big monitor in there and make some cool shit, because we all like
big-ass overlays too.
Yeah.
I read up on this. It's really neat. I mean, this is kind of something that was always there, just somebody needed to do it. And they used a 19V2000. It's a pretty standard vector monitor. Vector games, the monitors can be a bit of a piston to maintain. But anyway, he's got just a standard vector monitor. Now, the signal was there to drive a much smaller monitor, so it needed a higher level input. So what he did is he used a simple audio amplifier, just a set of cheap computer speakers, and fed the signal into the amplifier, if you will, and just used a conventional audio amplifier to amplify the video signal enough to get a bright, usable image. So clever thinking there, this wasn't. He didn't design the amplifier from the ground up. He just used some interesting stuff, and it works brilliantly, and he absolutely achieved it. So, yeah, it was always there. Somebody just needed to do it. Pretty cool. Really cool.
Really cool. It would be amazing to play Vectrex on a big screen.
Yeah, that would be sweet. I think that would certainly be. I would be very interested in reigniting my idea of picking up a Vectrex.
Yeah,
I like to sample and convert the video from vector to HDMI, just raster HDMI, and then feed that into a projector, so you get wall-sized Vectrex. That would be bad.
Well, I was about to say so it'd be interesting if someone made an interface to the laser vector projectors, which don't seem to be up to the speed and detail, at least sort of the ones I've seen at sort of cheaper, reasonable prices. But you'd presume at some point we'd get to a point where, you'd be able to essentially just one-to-one be able to then just project it with lasers onto a wall, and that would be pretty fucking cool.
Something else that's pretty cool and relates to big screens is one sent in by Retro Sean, and he says, "This is a very cool article about TV display tech, both old and new. Nothing most of us don't know already, but a very cool demonstration of how displays work." And it's entitled Mario at 380,000 frames per second. And I did watch this, and I think he undersells it, because it's a brilliant video, and I didn't know how some of the differences between the different TVs, the LCD screens, and they show you an OLED screen, and they zoom right in. He's got some pretty decent video and still cameras, and he zooms right in, literally down to the pixels. You can see the pixels on screen, and he shows you the differences when they display in black and when they display in color. And it's just, you've got to watch the video. It's really, really interesting. About maybe 15 minutes long, something like that, maybe 20 minutes, but really worth watching. I really enjoyed the video.
So got one here from Shady80 over at the British IBM. And I definitely, if there's kind of every month, there seems to be like one or two articles that I really would say, hey, listeners, follow up and give this one a look. This is one of them. So 80 is done. Hello, news from Shady80. Hello, my band has a feature hit out entitled Bob Noyce. We shot the music video at the Center for Computing History in Cambridge. Check it out here. It's also on Spotify and Apple Music and all those other places that the modern world enjoys streaming from. So he sent a link to a YouTube video, which of course you can watch the video. It is so neat. I mean, basically they just go around and film close up, bits in the Computer History Museum that they show that with the song over it. Really neat stuff, and a lot of still images and all. So the big deal about Robert Noyce, and 80 has explained this several times in great detail. He, along with Jack Kilby, they're credited for creating the first integrated microchip. And yeah, I mean, they absolutely, there are other ventures, a lot of ventures going on at the same time. The military in the U.S. had worked on one called the Tinker Toy, and the idea being it compressed a lot of circuit components into a very small package, and then those could be used in a modular fashion. These guys took it to silicon, and, here we go, game changer of, everything that existed before that and everything existed after that. So, this is 1968, and you think about it, 68, man. I mean, that wasn't that long ago. There are aircraft built in 68 that, are still premier today. And, that was just right about the time many of us were born or right before we were born. And, the world kind of changed right about the time we came along, and look how far it's come in just that period of time. So the 80, would pay tribute to this guy and his work. Absolutely, a wonderful thing, and we expect nothing less from the Shady 80 and his band of shysters.
I've got one from Mike James. Mike, do you want to explain this one to me?
What is it?
It's called Arcade Board Games, and there is a list of arcade board games.
I do.
That's about it.
So, I should have mentioned this at the start, actually, what we've been doing this month, although it was mainly last month, I guess. But I've been finishing off the board game, 3D printing the pieces, doing the board and all of that. And I made, you might see on our Facebook, a Monopoly version based around the show. So you're collecting arcade cabs instead of, properties, and everything's been rethemed, all the chance cards, etc. So I did those two games, almost finished our board game now, just waiting for a 3D design for the stack of CDs, and then it's done. So I just got into, looking at board games, reading about board games, and obviously I've got some of the MB ones that we've talked about before, the Pac-Man, I've got Frogger, Defender, and one other, I think it's Turbo, yeah, it's Turbo. And I thought, well, maybe there's like 8 or 9 of these games, something like that. So I had a Google, and there are lots more. The original MB ones, quick listing, alphabetical order are Berserk, Centipede, Defender, Donkey Kong Country, Frogger, Jungle Hunt, The Legend of Zelda, Ms. Pac-Man, Pac-Man, Pitfall, Pokemon Trainer 3, Sonic the Hedgehog, Street Fighter 2, Super Mario Brothers, Turbo, and Zaxxon. And I had no idea there were so many. We've talked about them before, but we always seem to end up talking about the same 4 or 5. But have you picked any more up, Scott?
Yeah, I've got pretty much all of them that I'm aware of that exist, other than The Legend of Zelda, just because it's kind of hard to find and I haven't come across one. But I've got pretty much all the others. I would say out of the whole stack, Zaxxon's kind of my favorite with the plastics and all. But none of them are really like crap. I mean, the most simplistic one maybe is Turbo, but it's still pretty darn playable. Yeah. They're neat. If you like the actual arcade games, you're going to love these.
Yeah, and Parker Brothers did a Cubert and a pole position as well. So I might try and just have a look every so often for these, do the old rounds on eBay, pick them up. I think on them, because they're just they're so inexpensive, so easy to find,
and so cool. I mean, you get a stack of these things. It's the kind of thing where you get, a couple folks over and you break out one of those, and it's like, oh shit, it's cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant stuff.
So speaking of board games and games about the show, here's another one about a game about the show. This is an update on Machu Picchu Mike, which we mentioned last month, being done by Gordon Murphy. And he says, thanks very much for the shout out on the show and your ideas on progressing the game. It was great hearing you guys talking about it, which we're doing again. I'll have a look at adding coca leaves somewhere. I'm currently debugging collision detection and level mapping and loading. He says there's a group of us heading over to Revival in May, so I hope to bring a new version over to that to show you. By the way, I've just finished a new version of Phoenix for iOS and released it. It's called Mech Wings. I'll provide a link to that in the show notes. You can check out his game. I had a look at... I didn't install it. I've not got iOS anywhere, but I did have a look at it. It looks pretty cool. So
would be really cool if Marvin Milk made an appearance in Machu Picchu Mike.
Well, he's not getting his own game, and he made up any particularly quickly at the moment.
No.
I think the
not
premise
through lack of
is
trying.
I think the premise is brilliant, where you can shift states, from solid to powder to liquid to encounter and defeat different obstacles and enemies. I'm telling you, man, Marvin Milk is the hero of the future.
I wish I had the soundboard and I could play the sound of an elephant, because there is an elephant in the room. And that is this news item, which is next up, which everyone has been reading about, talking about, knows about. And it is, of course, Billy Mitchell.
Atari Box changing the goddamn name again.
There's a lot of them, yeah.
Billy Mitchell having his high scores removed from Twin Galaxies. So
just a second. We are
all
all now officially better than Billy Mitchell at any of the games that he was ever there. We are better Donkey Kong players than he is, officially.
Official, yeah.
Even though I've only scored like 2,000 points whenever I go to an arcade machine at an expo, I'm still better than he is.
Yeah.
Suck it.
So what do we think about the whole Billy Mitchell scores, cheating, using MAME, submitting scores that can't be verified? What do we think?
Well, again, he is much like the other fellow, Todd
Rogers.
Sorry, I forgot Todd's name for a second. But much like Todd, these guys are great players. I mean, Billy Mitchell can play the hell out of a video game. I've seen him. No trick machines, wires, whatever. I've seen him at an expo sit there and play the hell out of a game and put up some high scores. And, the things that he's done, in general, I've heard him speak about his son and, his, football, his love of football and how much he, dedicates to seeing his son's games and all that and how important that family aspect is to him and just general things in the contact I've had with Billy Mitchell. He does not strike me. Some people just strike you as sinister people. You know what I'm saying? Some people just strike you as generally crooked people. Some people get it past you for a while, and then boy, do they come out of their shell. But I don't know. I don't think Billy's a sinister character. He is, certainly a self-promoter. He is certainly, a bit egocentric. But I just don't think my perception of him is that he's not a true villain. Obviously, I mean, again, I think we got to be very careful here where people say, oh, yes, this couldn't do this, right? But, whether the hardware could or could not achieve certain scores, there's a lot of variables. I mean, you can look at what the code should do, but then you look at what happens, right? I don't know. I think there's a lot of variables. I think if Billy could demonstrate I would say this, give him the chance to demonstrate. And I know, high scores are difficult to reproduce. You might hit it once, but if he can demonstrate that he is able to get scoring that's not as expected, again, maybe it's the subtle delays, maybe it's exploitation of a bug, like you move to this corner of the screen at this certain time. and that causes an increment of a scoring register in a way that wouldn't normally happen. Maybe there's something there that isn't necessarily tangible. I would say he could be given the chance to prove, maybe he picks out of all the games, let's say he picks 6, that he says, I can reproduce these scores and show you it can be done. I would say that should be afforded to him. If he declines to do that, or if he failed at even doing 1 out of 6 he picked, I would say it's probably all true, and those scores should be revoked.
I mean, there's no doubt in that. So the whole sort of thing came about because they'd analysed the videos and looked at the way the screen, the screen is drawn in Donkey Kong, and decided that that's how MAME draws it, not how the real arcade machine draws it.
Like I said, there are some indisputable things.
Oh yeah, but then the whole point of it is that it has to be done on unmodified hardware, and and you've got to draw a line somewhere. But there's no disputing the fact that even on MAME, playing it's still playing to that degree is still as challenging, even though it's not officially the right sort of score, the right hardware, the right score. But it's all a bit weird when you add in then when you've I've not watched King of Kong for a long time, but it was always in there. Steve Weebu was always calling him out and saying, I'm going to this event, I'm going to do my highest. I'm going to, I'm not saying I'm going to break a record, but I'm going to go for the crowd and do, a run through and see what high score I can get. Why don't you come along as well and show everyone, you actually playing it? And he always kind of backed out of trying to show off and, actually show that he could play the game. And then at the Midwest Gaming Classic, what was it, last weekend, the weekend before, and he did that, put out the statement where he's kind of like, people are looking into this properly, it's going to have due diligence on it, blah blah blah. None of it he was saying, it wasn't like before where he was going, I don't even know what MAME is. He just completely sort of steered away from any of that kind of thing and just went, people are going to look into it and investigate it and the truth will come out. But he was there. I would imagine there's probably a Donkey Kong machine there. All he needed to do was, he didn't have to get 1,000,000 points again. He just needed to play it and show people that, look, dudes, I can play this shit, and it would have been worlds better than putting out that bullshit video, that statement, which was just meaningless, really.
Yeah, the thing.
I'll say this: I did notice, during you look at the King of Kong, okay, a lot of it is horribly contrived. It's I can get you I could go to my local, my friend's restaurant locally, and I could film a video of him just, through the doors in the kitchen, standing around looking vexed, or just maybe stare at the fucking wall saying, my God, I thought lunch rush was going to be over at 3. Here it is 4. I got to call in 2 more waitresses and no one's answering the phone. That could be what's going on. And then I could film a discussion with, the business owner of a restaurant, down the road and go, Vinny's really feeling the heat from competition. I could show that. And it could be, Vinny was in, I was in his restaurant the other day and he wouldn't even come out. And I could show that video. And it's total horse shit, So I think a lot of that was very hyped and contrived. But again, that's why I'm saying give him the platform to step out and prove that he can do what he claimed. And if he chooses not to, I think that kind of seals it.
I mean, how many people who run expos, would jump at the chance to pay for him to come and do a perfect Pac-Man, play Donkey Kong? Everyone would, bend over backwards to get him there because it would pull people in like nobody's business, especially now. Before it would have done, but now even more so. So it's just putting all that together, and I don't know. Like you say, editing with the King of Kong. They were obviously aiming to steer that in a story to make make the drama out of it. But then there's still this aspect of no one really seems to have seen him in person. No one has come out and been like, yeah, we've got this footage of him. Third person camera footage of him playing it and doing this, or there's nothing concrete there at the moment. If there is, it's not being brought forward. So I think we just need to, him either to say, once and for all, yeah, all right, I'm a bit of a schmuck. I'm not as good as I say I am. Or someone to stage, set something up properly and everyone to see, that it's all right. But who knows?
Yeah. So got one here from Mike James. And Ben Heck tears down the Oregon Trail game, the handheld I talked about last month. And he pretty much says what I said. You take it apart and it's a, glop top ASIC and it runs Oregon Trail. They dump the ROM and they've got the binary dump of that. And that's kind of about it. They show it, disassembled, and they're going to make a more compact version of it. There is a lot of just dead airspace inside that thing. It's designed to be a handheld, so it should fit in your hand, right? Obviously, if you, fold the display back on the control board, and you could put it in something much smaller. I think it's a cool little box. I like it. I'm glad I bought it. And Ben just kind of shows you what's inside of it. If you want to see it in person, it's the best teardown out there yet, because initially there were just a few photos that people took, and as soon as you pull off the back, you can see for yourself what's in there. But yeah, Ben does a pretty comprehensive teardown. They show you what the different ICs on the board are and all that. So good visual presentation.
And he does put it in a cool little case at the end as well. Makes it really small, kind of a PSP style, but much smaller.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got one here from Peter Gibbs, and it's more drugs and NES games shenanigans. This time, instead of people intentionally trying to 3D print small cartridges and put drugs inside them and sell them, this was a collector who bought some games at a flea market, and they were PAL versions, but he decided they were a bit heavier than maybe they should be. So decided to unscrew them and have a look what was going on, because as we know, there's been various NES games over the years that are a little bit heavier than they should be because they've been Famicom boards plugged into an adapter that then goes to the NES, and so you can get free adapters out of them and things like that. But instead of any of that, he found some shiny bags of drugs. Mike has said this is worth reading, certainly for the pun. This certainly changes the meaning of blowing the cartridge. And certainly, hang on. So there's a picture here where it's a picture of Narc. It wasn't actually Narc, was it? Because that would be quite amazing. I know it's roller games and golf that he bought. But yeah, he did some digging, and he found another story about a copy of golf that was filled with $5,000 in bills. And so sure enough, he's got videos, and they've got these little bags of drugs that they've put in there. How they've ended up then in a flea market, who knows? What they decided they were doing in there, because it doesn't look like a temporary storage thing of like, oh, I'm just going to hide my drugs in my NES games so no one finds them. It looks like they were specifically for distribution or something, but yeah. Drugs and NES games is a flavor of the month, it seems.
Yeah, it's funny. I told the story in the show years ago. A friend of mine bought a pinball, and we took it apart. We found like a little Coke vial in it, and some other, like a bong, with a gargoyle on it. Somebody hid their drugs in it a long time ago, and there it is. So there is a 1:10 Billy Mitchell statement here. I will hold the microphone down here, and hopefully it picks it up well enough. We'll see what happens, and we'll see what Billy has to say.
Hi, I'm Billy Mitchell. We're here at the Midwest Gaming Classic. I'm here with Old School Gamer Magazine. I've been asked to address things that are recently in the media. The fact of the matter is, now there is a true professional due diligence being done to investigate things that happened as far as 35 years ago in a professional manner, not in a shock jock mentality designed to create hits. We will show that everything that has been done, everything was done professionally, according to the rules, according to the scoreboard, the integrity that was set up. not 2014 forward by the current regime who wants to reach back 35 years. Everything will be transparent. Everything will be available. I wish I had it in my hands right now. I wish I could hand it to you. But it's taken a considerable amount of time. Witnesses, documents, everything will be made available to you. Nothing will be withheld. You absolutely have my commitment to that. We've been at this since 1982, and it's not going to stop now.
So, I mean, there you have it. I mean, you know, he's publicly saying they have all the evidence and they're going to submit it and nothing to be held back. Okay, we've heard things like that before. You know, just wait until the Kickstarter. Everything will be revealed. All your questions will be cleared up. Bunch of haters and trolls. And, you know, OJ at one point was looking for the real killer. So I can neither accept nor dismiss this from Billy. I think it kind of, he's saying what he's saying. If he backs it up or if he reproduces it in person, I will be willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. But you know, I think he needs to do that and do that quickly if it's going to be of any value.
Yeah.
Bear in mind as well, he is also on the advisory board for Old School Gamer magazine. So, you know, I don't know whether there's a vested interest in them there giving him some time and a platform to try and redeem himself or not. Or...
Well, I think quite obviously so, yeah.
So, yeah, this isn't going to be the last we'll hear of this. This will rumble on, I think.
Yeah.
Well, he ends up getting a job in Arizona warehouse.
One here.
Hiding so he doesn't get his ass kicked.
One here from me, and it dropped into my inbox. We've heard about the gaming markets. We've mentioned them before. We've been to a few of them. A couple of different ones between us, and they're run by the same people who run Play Expo. And they're bringing a gaming market to Manchester, and you can book as an exhibitor. And the launch Manchester Gaming Market will be taking place on Sunday, the 2nd of September, at Britannia Satchers Hotel in the city centre. So Sunday, 2nd of September, might toodle along to the first Manchester Gaming Market.
I might just go there. I'm not in the mood to buy more crap at the moment. Well, maybe.
But you
depends.
do it anyway.
I would imagine there's some bits and pieces I might pick up at Revival, but if not, then there's a slim chance there might be what I'm looking for in Manchester, I guess. But it's only across the way, so I'll no doubt come along for a beer and some catch up. Especially as we're not doing NERG. And, well, we haven't discussed whether we're doing the second Blackpool yet.
No,
seeing
we
as there's
haven't.
no Play Manchester this year.
I'm undecided at this point. I might just go as a punter. If it's going to be the Manchester crowd, we do terribly there. And they're expensive booths, so if I go, it'll just be as a punter, I think.
It's expensive to put a booth up.
Mm-hmm.
They're claiming that it's going to be, you know, a retro-only, retro-focused one, and instead of having sort of modern stuff. But I've got a mate who's looking for Northern Expos to show his indie games, and so he's like, "Oh, are there any that, you know, I can take my indie game to?" And I was like, "Well, Play do stuff for indies, but they're scrap Manchester and they're doing Blackpool, but instead. But they're saying there's a retro focus, so I don't know whether they're going to do indies." And then as soon as I looked on their page and was like going down, I was like, "Yep, they've still got indie games and stuff." So I don't know how much specifically, you know, retro and how much they might creep some modern stuff in. It will. But it'd be weird going to Blackpool as a punter, because
I know, yeah,
we've got nowhere to keep the good beer and to have a good seat. And, you know, all those like little luxuries that we now take for granted.
Yeah.
I'm not drinking their shit beer all weekend.
Hip flask.
Yeah.
Hip flask.
Wandering around with all the, you know, the normals.
Ooh, the public.
The normies.
Members of the public.
Got one here from Per Holmstrom. And he says he'd like us to let us know about a local gaming convention in a town he lives in. Last year, there were 11,000 visitors. So it's pretty big. It certainly is. They have arcade pinball room, 20 classic arcade games, 20 pinball games, free to play, a LAN room, board games, Legos, comics, cosplayers, and much more. The convention is called Nordsken, meaning Northern Lights, and it's 10 to 12 May in Skellefteå, Sweden. That sounds pretty cool. So if you can,
and he's in chat, and he's just heard. He's in chat,
What's
and
that?
he's just. I say he's in chat, and he's just heard you absolutely murder that name.
All right, let me try again. All right, take 2. Skellefteå.
I think that's bob on. I'm sure he'll chime in if he's still there. He was a few minutes ago. Well, I think we're almost done. Get in there.
There's one that I've sent in, which is an interview on Eurogamer, which is more content on the Atari VCS story, and it's quite a long article, so I'm not going to go through the entire thing now. But it was an interesting interview when I started reading through it, because there were some interesting things I noted about it. For instance, they're saying you've brought hardware here, but you've not shown any software, and we all know where that goes. Although that was someone that brought a design of a console and no hardware and no software. But then how hard?
In the end.
Well, yeah, how hard is it? At this point, what they've basically done is they've taken a laptop mainboard and they're putting it inside their fancy wood grain, and admittedly nice looking design. But the hardware side of things is, well, they're just taking any laptop, x86 laptop could basically do what they're trying to do as a prototype. There's another bit where they were saying they start complaining about their original hardware engineers and how they did a bad job, and how they're much happier with their new hardware engineers, which seems somewhat familiar. And then lots of guff about courting developers, and we've got indies that are interested and they're coming on. We've said we're open to them coming on board, and we're talking to bigger studios and stuff, and it all seems very familiar and isn't really going anywhere. And as someone pointed out, there's a statement where they're talking about they're selling this to there's the nostalgic people who remember the Atari, VCS from when it came out, and it'll play those games and it'll cater to them. But there's also the guys that they want something they can plug into their telly that can play Netflix, because they don't have enough things that already plug into their telly, if not the telly themselves that plays Netflix. And these are the kind of people that buy Mini Coopers these days and will do that. And it's like, so you're selling this to old guys who remember the VCS, who probably don't want this because they have a million ways to play VCS games, and then people who buy Mini Coopers. And it's just all very much like, yeah, we've got this invented market segments that we're aiming towards that probably, we think there's bound to be enough people there. I don't know, but we've got no software really. We're courting people, and then there's some stuff about, well, we're not doing crowdfunding.
Why the fucking Mini Cooper of all? As you're sitting here discussing this, of all the things, literally, I was listening to everything you were saying up until you said Mini Cooper. Then it's kind of like everything just kind of tuned out, and your voice is like faint in the background. I'm just thinking, Mini Cooper. Why the fuck a Mini Cooper?
There's very specific people around here that drive the Mini Coopers. I love the original Mini, like with a fucking absolutely adore it, and would have one if it wasn't for the fact that they're almost as much trouble as the Alpha, but not quite as fast. And I used to borrow my mates as much as I could. And the new one, I just hate with, like, it's over-designed interior, overly kitsch interior. It's too big. It's just not what a Mini stood for. But it seems to be popular with, especially around here, it seems estate agents and people like that, and that kind of sums up like, well, I don't, they're
a new hairdresser's car.
Can't afford a proper decent car, so they're buying Mini Coopers instead. And it's like, yeah, there is definitely a segment of people that are buying this, and they're kind of douchebags. Generally, it seems so. If they want to try and sell this to them, try and con them out of more money, that's their prerogative. But like a lot of it just, there's just, it just doesn't seem like it, as we know, not really going to go anywhere. They supposedly were showing hardware behind closed doors at GDC, but there's no actual, nothing's been shown of any front end or anything, or why anyone would want to put the effort
I've lost
into
track
porting
of
to
their
Linux.
damn stories. At one point, it was, as I recall, the story was, yeah, we're all ready except for the software. And then it's like, well, we're all ready except for the hardware. Well, it sounds like you're all ready except for hardware and software.
Well, that would have been when they had the original hardware developers, which they've since thrown under the hardware developer bus, as is wont to happen. And they've brought on new hardware developers.
I'm gonna have to get a hold of Clay and Sean and all those guys, and see if they've seen this guy skulking around under the bus lately.
Yeah, again, another story that is going to continue to go on. We finally got rid of Coleco Chameleon, and we've now replaced it with Atari VCS and Billy Mitchell, it seems.
So,
not quite the same pizzazz of the original story, but an interesting take too.
Yeah.
We're going to have to see if sooner or later it turns out that, this will be the fascinating thing, right? What if, it turns out that Atari is actually Atari Corp.Inc.LLC and was formed with new members cutting out the original Atari team, and they think they still own the thing. And then all of a sudden it comes out that they didn't even own it. And, that some shadowy figure at Atari was defrauding the rest of the Atari board members. That would be an epic additional, bit to the storyline.
Well, I was going to round it off with a Craigslist ad, which was great because I read it earlier, but it's since been taken down.
That went nowhere.
Yeah, it's since been taken down.
I've just gone onto that, and the posting has been flagged for removal.
But it was a great read, nonetheless.
I'm sure it was good. It was about a Toyota Corolla. So.
Yeah.
Or Camry. I don't know. Either one's a beast.
Which brings us to a close.
Doesn't it?
So,
that's got to be a record news there. 1 hour, 24 minutes.
Yeah.
Nailed
pretty quick
shit.
news, pretty quick top 10. But the interview this month is the John Romero evening from Centre for Computing History that I did last month. And that runs just over 2 hours. So you've still got a decent length show with some fabulous content.
That's what she said.
Michael, is the RGR board game going to be available and more playable at Revival?
It's going to be a complete prototype, which it already is, apart from the stack of CDs. So Sean, he said he'd try and do the CDs this weekend. He'll send them to me. I'll print them at work this week. And, if it needs adjusting, we'll do that. But yes, it should all be completely finished this week.
What's the gist of the Monopoly thing? Is that going to be a full production version, Mike?
No, there's no way. Can you imagine getting that licensed? All the companies that's involved, because you're buying arcade games, so it's got Atari licenses, Williams, Namco, Bally, all sorts of different licensing in there. So there is just no way to pass.
It was a facetious question, I thought.
Yeah.
Release it as a PDF and people can do what they want with it.
Well, I have made available on our website. I did submit it to news, and I'll include it in the show notes. There is a link to what I've actually done and all the links to the stuff that I've printed, 3D printed, etc. So if you want to make your own copy, you can do. It's just, instead of buying properties, you're buying arcade games. And instead of building houses, you're building arcades. And instead of hotels, you're building arcade emporiums. And it's instead of the train stations, you've got 4 different video game related museums. So everything's been changed up. All the amounts, the fines, the purchases, the mortgages, all those have been left the same. So the math still works. I've not changed any of that. The chance cards have become arcade owners cards. The community chest have become pinball owners cards. And instead of, paying taxes, it'll say like one of your monitors blew, you've got to replace it, pay $100, that kind of thing. So it's all just been rethemed and switched around. If you want to make your own copy, feel free to download it from our site.
My monitor blew. It needed the money.
Yeah. It's not quite realistic. I think a new monitor's 50 quid in the game, so we know that's a bit out, but anyway.
So if there's enough folks knocking about a revival, do you reckon we can get some sort of one of the evenings that we're not at Shimla Peppers, heading off into the local bar and getting Ashley to do our drink service for us while we all play the board game, perhaps, or something?
Definitely. Yeah, we can do that.
Excellent. Sounds good.
Yep. And it is a good game that plays well, as we know. All right, so, yeah, that's it. April, done, man.
Goodbye, listeners.
Yeah, thank you for dropping by and staying in chat. There was a few again this month. A couple of new faces. Todd Holcomb was in there this month. I've not seen Todd online for a while. So, yeah, we'll see you again next month. Enjoy the rest of the show.
All right. 99.
Hey, Mike, I'm going to export this and save it just in case.